The Highway of Tears refers to a stretch of Highway 16 in British Columbia, Canada, where at least 40 women and girls, mostly Indigenous, have been murdered or gone missing since 1969. The story of the killers, or the possibility of multiple perpetrators behind these crimes, is one of tragedy, systemic neglect, and a haunting mystery that spans decades.
Thank you for watching Behind the Veil, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel.
We really appreciate it. Below, I weave a narrative grounded in forensic and psychological analysis, drawing on documented evidence, victimology, and the socio-cultural context of the cases, while acknowledging the uncertainty surrounding whether one or multiple killers are responsible. The account avoids sensationalism, focusing on the facts and the human toll, as well as the challenges that have allowed these crimes to remain largely unsolved. The shadow on Highway 16. In the rugged, misty expanse of northern British Columbia, Highway 16 cuts through dense forests, small towns, and Indigenous communities, connecting Prince George to Prince Rupert. Known as the Yellowhead Highway, it's a lifeline for remote areas, but for decades it's been stained by grief, earning the name Highway of Tears. Since 1969, women and girls, often young, Indigenous, and hitchhiking, have vanished or been found dead along this 720-kilometer stretch or nearby routes like Highways 5, 97, and 24. The official count of victims varies, with police linking 18 cases to the Highway of Tears, while Indigenous advocates and families estimate up to 40 or more, reflecting a broader pattern of violence against First Nations women. The story begins in 1969 when 26-year-old Gloria Moody, a mother from the Williams Lake First Nation, disappeared after a night out in Williams Lake. Her body was found the next day, October 26th, in a wooded area, beaten and sexually assaulted. No suspect was arrested, and her case set a grim precedent. Over the decades, more names joined hers. Maureen Mosey, 1969, Pamela Darlington, 1970, Monica Ignace, 1974, Colleen McMillan, 1974, Lana Derrick, 1995, Alicia Germain, 1994, Roxanne Tiara, 1994, Ramona Wilson, 1994, Delphine Nical, 1995, Nicole Hoa, 2002, Tamara Chipman, 2005, Isla Sarek Auger, 2006, and others. Most were Indigenous, aged 14 to 30, and many were last seen hitchhiking or in vulnerable situations due to poverty, lack of public transportation, or personal struggles like addiction. Their bodies, when found, showed signs of strangulation, stabbing, or blunt force trauma, often dumped in remote areas along or near the highway. The killers, one or many. The Highway of Tears cases span over 50 years, suggesting either an extraordinarily long-lived single killer, or more likely, multiple perpetrators exploiting the region's vulnerabilities. Forensic evidence paints a fragmented picture. Some victims, like Colleen McMillan, were linked to a suspect decades later through DNA, Bobby Jack Fowler, an American drifter convicted of other murders, whose DNA matched McMillan's 1974 killing. Fowler, who died in prison in 2006, is a prime suspect in other cases, e.g. Pamela Darlington and Monica Ignace, but his confirmed presence in Canada only in the 1970s rules him out for later murders like those in the 1990s or 2000s. Ballistic evidence or consistent methods, e.g. strangulation in several cases, suggest possible connections between some killings, but the varied causes of death and long time span point to multiple offenders. Psychologically, the killers likely fit the profile of opportunistic predators. The victims' profiles, young, Indigenous women often hitchhiking due to limited transportation options, suggest a killer or killers who targeted vulnerable individuals in remote areas. A single killer might be a transient figure, such as a truck driver or laborer, familiar with the highway's isolated stretches and able to blend into small communities. The psychological profile leans toward a power control-oriented offender, possibly with a predatory motive rooted in misogyny or racial bias, given the disproportionate targeting of Indigenous women. If multiple killers, they could range from organized, planning attacks, disposing of bodies, to disorganized, impulsive, leaving bodies in plain sight, reflecting the diversity of crime scenes. The killer's ability to evade capture stems from the region's geography and systemic issues. Highway 16's remote stretches, flanked by dense forests and sparse populations, offer ideal conditions for disposing of bodies with minimal witnesses. Many victims weren't reported missing immediately, and police response was often slow, hampered by jurisdictional fragmentation across small RCMP detachments. Societal biases, racism toward Indigenous communities, assumptions about victims' high-risk lifestyles investigations. For example, families reported dismissive attitudes from authorities, with some cases initially labeled as runaways rather than potential homicides. A case study, the vanishing of Tamara Chipman. Tamara Chipman, A 22-year-old from the Thornhill First Nation vanished on September 21, 2005, near Prince Rupert. She was last seen hitchhiking east along Highway 16, a common practice in the area due to scarce public transit. Her disappearance wasn't reported for weeks, and her body has never been found, though she's presumed dead based on the pattern of other cases. Tamara's case encapsulates the tragedy of the Highway of Tears, a young woman trying to navigate a region with limited resources, preyed upon in a moment of vulnerability. No forensic evidence, DNA, clothing, or witnesses has surfaced, and no suspect has been named. Her mother, Toma, became an advocate, joining families who formed groups like the Highway of Tears initiative to demand justice and better safety measures. The investigation struggles. In 2005, the RCMP formed Project E-PANA, a task force to investigate 18 cases along Highway 16 and adjacent routes, focusing on women who disappeared or were found dead under suspicious circumstances. The task force identified similarities in some cases, victims' demographics, hitchhiking connections, and body disposal sites, but concluded that no single killer was responsible for all. Bobby Jack Fowler's DNA link to Colleen McMillan was a breakthrough, but it closed only one case. Other suspects, like Gary Taylor Handlin, convicted in 2019 for Monica Ignace's 1974 murder, and Brian Peter Arp, suspected in Lana Derrick's 1995 disappearance, have been investigated, but most cases remain open. The 2002 disappearance of Nicole Hoare, a non-Indigenous woman, drew significant media attention, highlighting disparities in how cases were prioritized compared to Indigenous victims. Forensic challenges abound. Many bodies were found months or years later, degraded by weather or animals, limiting DNA or trace evidence. The lack of surveillance cameras, cell phone data in early cases, or witnesses in remote areas left investigators with little to work with. Psychologically, the killer's ability to exploit systemic neglect, poverty, racism, and inadequate infrastructure allowed them to operate with impunity. For example, the lack of public transportation forced many women to hitchhike, creating opportunities for predators. The human toll and legacy, the Highway of Tears, is more than a series of crimes. It's a symbol of systemic failure. Indigenous communities already grappling with historical trauma from residential schools and colonization have borne the brunt of the violence. Families like those of Ramona Wilson, whose 1994 murder remains unsolved, or Isla Sarek Auger, found dead in 2006 at age 14, have channeled their grief into advocacy. Initiatives like the Highway of Tears Symposium 2006 led to recommendations for better transportation, safety measures, and police accountability, though implementation has been slow. Billboards and memorials along Highway 16 honor the victims, but the lack of arrests in most cases fuels ongoing pain. The killers, whether one or many, remain shadows, faceless figures who exploited a region's isolation and society's indifference. Some may be dead, like Fowler, or incarcerated for unrelated crimes. Others may still live, blending into small towns or passing through as transients. The possibility of a single, prolific killer, perhaps a long-haul trucker, lingers in speculation, but the evidence leans toward multiple perpetrators, each taking advantage of the same vulnerabilities. Why they remain uncaught? The killer's evasion is a product of circumstance and systemic flaws. The highway's isolation provided cover, with few witnesses or immediate reports. Jurisdictional issues, cases spanning multiple RCMP detachments, hindered coordination. Societal biases downplayed the urgency of Indigenous women's cases, delaying investigations. Even with modern forensics, like DNA in Fowler's case, the passage of time and environmental factors have eroded evidence. Psychologically, the killer's opportunistic nature, striking at random, targeting those least likely to be missed, made patterns hard to detect until years later. A call unanswered. The Highway of Tears remains a wound in Canada's conscience. Each victim, Gloria, Tamara, Ayla, and dozens more, was a daughter, sister, or mother, stolen from communities that still seek answers. The killers, whether one or many, have left a legacy of fear and unresolved grief. Project E-PANA continues, but with only one conviction and one DNA-linked suspect, the cases linger in limbo. Families hold vigils, advocates push for change, and the highway stretches on, silent but heavy with its secrets.